Right then, guys, welcome back into the Spooky Shed, your go-to place for conversations around all things weird, scary, and of course spooky. It took some time getting this one planned, but I'm excited for this. So we have got Will from the Red Treehouse podcast. So Will, welcome into the shed. How are we?
Liam, thanks, man. I'm good. It's been a long time coming. Super excited.
Yeah, it's took a good few goes to get this. But I think we've both cancelled on each, well, at least once. I think I've cancelled twice, possibly. Fourth or fifth time, lucky we finally managed to get it.
Life, man. Life is chaos sometimes, and, you do what you can.
Yeah, exactly. But we're here now, and I'm looking forward to this. I did prep you. I always do, apart from a couple of times when I've forgotten. I always ask my guests to leave something in the shed with me. So it can be something meaningful, something you love, something you hate, a person, a place, feeling, a bit of advice, literally anything you want. Preferably the weirder, the better. So what have you got for me, Will?
So I have been thinking about it and going around and around on what I'm going to choose, and I'm actually going to leave this whole house that we live in right now. So we're building a house, and we're set to move in sometime in the next maybe 5-6 weeks, somewhere in there. And this house is weird. We've experienced some weird things here. And so it'll be nice to sort of get out of here, leave it all behind, leave whatever residual energy stuff is here and start fresh. So I'm leaving a whole damn haunted house in the shed.
Nice. I like it. As long as there's no haunted dolls, then that's fine.
Nope. And not that we found.
That's-
But who knows? I mean, with this place, there could be 1,000 things hidden in the walls, and we would never know.
Haunted dolls are not my thing. Do not like them at all. Yeah. Right. So, Will, talk to me about your podcast. So, the Red Tree House. Now, obviously, I'm the Spooky Shed. I'm sat in a shed. It doesn't look like you're in a tree house, so that's a shame.
So, no, I'm not. And, most people don't know this. I don't think I've shared it too often. The Red Tree House was sort of born out of one of my love for one of my favorite horror movies, Hereditary. And some of the most pivotal scenes in the movie take place in the treehouse in the backyard. And I want to say one of the opening scenes, maybe within the first 2 or 3 minutes, it may not even be that far in, there's a red light in a treehouse. And so as I was thinking through starting the show, trying to decide on names and try and figure it all out, my daughter, we were riding in the car, and she said, well, what horror movie do you love? And so I had just watched Hereditary, maybe the night before, 2 nights before that. And it just sort of clicked. And so I thought, it's something unique. I don't think there's another Red Treehouse podcast among the 6 million in the world. And so if you're going to hear the Red Treehouse, you're going to search for it, I'm going to be the only one that pops up probably. And so we just sort of went from there. Love telling scary stories, man. It sort of goes back to the way I grew up, listening to my dad and grandfather and, tell spooky stories. To this day, I don't know what's true and what's not. Maybe some of that they just thought of on the spot, but it's sort of a callback to my, my early childhood years. And, I was an 80s and 90s kid, so I grew up on an unhealthy diet of Stephen King and Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark, Twin Peaks, X-Files, all these things. And so now as an adult in my early 40s, it's sort of carried forward and almost circled back a little bit.
Yeah, no, I like it. It's a cool name, and similar reason to why I asked. Because originally when started this out, it wasn't called the Spooky Shed. I say because, I wasn't in a shed to begin with, and then my son was born, and I had to move out of the room I was recording in, so I had to build a shed. That was literally the same reason. I was like, surely there's no one else stupid enough to sit in a freezing cold shed.
It's a thing, man. I've thought of other names, and sometimes you put your idea into like a name generator, and it pops up with all these chaos things, and then I always would check it into Spotify or Apple Podcasts just to make sure there was an overlap. There were so many show names that were either identical or similar that I thought, I'm going to get buried before I even get started. Interestingly enough, though, Liam, I actually record most of my episodes, at least in this house. We have a pool house off the side of the main house. It sort of is a log cabin. So it's not a tree house. I'm not up in the air, but it resembles a tree house enough on the inside that I don't feel like I'm posing.
Fair enough. So you mentioned there, obviously, basically mentioned where your interest for the scary stories and stuff come from then. So, and obviously you mentioned the haunted house and stuff. So was it the interest in the scary stories and say the shows like Goosebumps, Are You Afraid of That? Is that really where your interest in all the weird stuff in life comes from then?
I think so. I grew up in New York, and so some of my earliest memories as a kid was sitting on the front stoop, on the front steps, into the night, especially like summer nights when it was warm enough outside to sit. My
Mm.
grandfather, my dad, telling stories about UFOs and, weird things they experienced growing up and, stories my grandfather had from, Puerto Rico and, just the weird unexplained things that, they would talk about. And so I remember those things being maybe when I was, 8 or 9 years old, somewhere in there, young kid. But then by then, Twin Peaks, Unsolved Mysteries, like all these things were out at the same time. And so those stories, what started as just listening to stories turned into like now I want to read about stuff beyond what my grandfather and my dad experienced, and watch things that at some point I realized may have been a little bit too old for where I was at that age in my life. But yeah, my earliest memories, some of the best memories I have of being a kid growing up, was sitting around and listening, and then reading and watching. Over time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it was the same for me. I mean, I used to always it's weird, like, because I know you obviously have another podcast as well, like, obviously around horror movies, which is I fucking love horror movies and stuff. It's weird, isn't it, how, like, watching it, like, say, it starts off when you're a kid, like, being scared's fun
Yeah,
until what
I remember getting this question, in a recent episode that I did that I was hosting. I asked the guest the question, do you enjoy the feeling of being afraid? And one guest said yes, one guest said no, and they turned the question to me, and I remember saying I love it. It's like a thing that like a high that I'm chasing. And I remember the most scared I've ever been was watching The Exorcist by myself as a young kid, way too young to have ever seen that movie. But I remember watching it as a really young kid, and I've been chasing that sort of high ever since. Now I've come close with little things here and there. Horror movies don't generally scare me. Scary stories don't generally scare me. There are a couple of times where I get freaked out and I have to turn the light on. But yeah, there's something about that feeling of being afraid and then quickly realizing, okay, I'm still safe. Like nothing's gonna jump out from the closet, from under the bed, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's I think that's what it is. It's like I said, because you're safe. You're just on the sofa watching whatever you're watching. You're fine. But when stuff starts to really happen, but it's funny as well because there's nothing worse than when you're watching a horror movie and then you hear a noise in the house. Nothing worse than that. Then everything gets too real, and that's when lights have to start going.
Yeah, for sure. We live in this old colonial style house. It's at least 100 and I would say at least 150 years old. It's been renovated a handful of times over the century plus. But there are times where we hear things like I'm recording downstairs, but there are times where we hear things in rooms upstairs, footsteps, knocks on the door. I have a dog here who's to my right somewhere. And there are times where we'll hear random noises and he'll pick his head up and he'll walk to the staircase and he'll look up the stairs and he'll stay there. There have been times where he's laid at the bottom of the stairs, almost like he's keeping guard or keeping watch. We've experienced some weird things as far as like seeing things out of the corner of our eyes, and so there's a bridge, I guess, between scary movies that don't scare me or spooky things that don't affect me that way, and then the real life stuff where I do feel scared and I do feel a little nervous and I do feel this sense of like anxiety and tension in my shoulders that hey, something doesn't feel right. So
I should say though, because obviously you mentioned The Exorcist there and watching it far too young, and I did the same. But I am one of them weirdos where I didn't find it like as scary as a lot of people do. There was parts of it that I actually found funny. Like to me, the whole bit where she comes down the stairs, to me, that's hilarious.
yeah, sure.
Don't know why, but it just is.
I think it's because of the way that I was sort of forced to watch it, and I've told
Mm.
this story before, but I always get a little bit of a kick out of it every time I tell it that, I was watching it, I was sneak watching it initially on network television. Commercials cut in all the scary parts, and so by the time I had gotten done, I thought I had seen the movie. The next day I get up to go to school, my mom says, "Hey, when you get home, when your dad gets home, he's got a surprise for you, whatever." He comes home and he says, "Listen, I know you were watching The Exorcist. You know you weren't supposed to watch it." And I tried to deny it. He's like, "But no one goes to the bathroom that many times in 2 hours. Like, don't even try it." And so he pulls out a VHS of the movie, unedited, right, full version. And I sat there that night by myself in a dark ass room, just me and the TV, horrified. And it was a couple of years. This would have been maybe 8 or 9 years before the new version was released with all the the director's cut. And so I actually got a chance to watch it in the theater. Now, by the time I had gone to the theater, I had seen the original cut 50 times. And
Mm,
so it wasn't scary until I saw it in the theater and I couldn't escape the sound. I couldn't escape the huge visual in front of me. Those are really the only two times, same movie, two different times that I've
mm,
been like fearful watching a movie. But I realize like the movie's 50 plus years old now.
mm,
And there are parts of it comparative to other movies that have come out since that just they feel a little cheesy, they feel a little hokey, just don't quite hold up as well as they did maybe when it first released, but yeah, it's to me it's still the scariest movie I've ever seen. I think because of those first handful of times.
I think again, very very similar. I watched it when I wasn't supposed to. So my brother got it on VHS for Christmas one year, and I remember my mum and dad telling him about how it's literally the scariest movie ever made and all this. And straight away, my ears picked up straight away. I was like, right, I want to watch it. Nope, you're not allowed. It's too young. I was like, why? And then very simple. I went in my brother's bedroom, stole a video, went in my room, watched it, and weirdly, the only bit that ever bothered me on it was I think it's like the first like real bit of possession bit where when she's on the bed flying backwards and forwards.
Yeah.
I always remember that the first time, well, the first couple of times I watched it, that bit I always used to get proper chills, like hairs on the back of my
Yeah.
neck and everything.
Yeah.
Don't know what it was about, but it was just weird.
I'm with you. When she's flip-flopping back and forth and all of a sudden, like, her head she throws her head back and she has that, like, growl. It's the growl and the
Yeah.
eyes that were like, "Whoa, wait a minute. Not expecting that."
Mm,
Because I think all the promo stuff, right, all the marketing, all the stuff, even now, like, my kids haven't seen it, but all the things they have seen are after she's already possessed, she's already got the face change, right? She's already got the weird look. And so in a way they're prepared for that part of it, or at least they
mm,
think, right? But they don't show the actual like initial possession scene in any of the trailers or anything like that. And so, you get to it and you're expecting this like
mhm,
massive change, but it's not. It's super subtle and then it sort of picks up from there. And man, I remember the chills that went down my back and the fear that like crept over my shoulders. Like, holy shit, there's no way. Yeah, I mean, even talking about it now, like visualizing it, there's still a little bit of a chill that goes down my arms.
yeah, I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Right then, so wasn't expecting us to talk that much about horror movies, but I've got no problem with that. So I want to know. I want to know about this house. Then I want to know some of the things that have happened.
Yeah. So we've been here about 5 years now or so,
Mm,
going on 5 years. And it's an old house. Like I said, over 150 years old. It sits on land that's obviously even older than that. At the corner of the house is there's an elementary school that my youngest son went to, and in front of that, there's the one-room schoolhouse, like the original one-room schoolhouse from, like, colonial times, like the 1700s. So, that's sort of the context of where the house sits. Within maybe not even a week of moving in, I came downstairs one night or one morning, from getting up, and, I noticed that every light in the house was on, everything. Night lights, and table lamps, overheads, everything was on. And I always am always the last one to go to bed at night. Put the dog out, right? Lock everything up, make sure everything's closed up, lights are off, doors are everything. And so when I woke up the next morning, I was a little annoyed, right? Like one of my boys or both of my boys, someone got up in the middle of the night, turned everything on, and I don't know why they did that. Like, why would you turn on every room, every light on in every room in the house? And so I get up early. About an hour later, I go to wake my daughter up. She's in the downstairs bedroom at that point. And she says, "Dad, like something weird happened last night." And I said, "Yeah, one of you left all the lights on. Like, why would you turn all the lights on? The house is glowing." And she said, "No, Dad, like you don't understand." So at about 3:30 in the morning, somewhere in there, I woke up. Someone was knocking on one of the bedroom doors. So that bedroom has two entrances and exits. One goes into the kitchen, one goes into the hallway on opposite sides of the room. And so she said someone was knocking on the door closest to the staircase, which is where the hallway is. And I said, "Okay, well, who was it?" She said, "I don't know. I heard the knocking. I opened the door. There was no one there. Pitch black in the house. There were no lights on." So like I freaked out and I jumped into bed. I said, "Okay." She said, maybe a couple minutes later, on the other door that goes into the kitchen, someone was banging in the room on the door on that door. I said, "Okay, so like what happened then?" She said, "Well, I sort of like didn't do anything for a little while and then it came back. The knocking came back. And so I opened the door and all of the lights were on in the house. Like bathroom, everything was on." I said, "Was it one of your brothers?" She said, "No, like I didn't hear anybody come down the stairs because there's one bedroom downstairs, which is hers, and then all the other bedrooms were upstairs. And the house is creaky and noisy and old, and like you could hear someone breathing on the other side of the house. That's how thin the walls are. And she said, no, I didn't hear anybody come downstairs. And like I was awake and alert. And so I come down just the next morning, a couple hours later, and all the lights are still on. Right. And so she's got this weird knocking stuff. She's got these lights turning on. And I thought for the longest time, like, hey, this is weird, but there's got to be like one of the boys is obviously pulling a prank. Like my sons are, they they do that kind of thing. And so like that was my initial like, all right, I'm going to explain it away. Well, last spring break, actually no, I'm sorry, this year for 2024, in the spring, our whole family went to the beach for a week. My father-in-law was letting the dogs out, and I got a call from him one morning, and he said, "Hey, something weird is like going on in the house. Like the doors were locked, but all the lights were on." And I said, "Well, tell me more." Because like at this point,
Mm.
my antennas are up like, what the hell's going on? He's like, yeah, all the lights. I said, which lights? He said, all of them, like in every room, hallways, staircase, bedrooms, bathroom, table lamps, everything was plugged in, turned on. He said, I was here last night to let the dogs out for the night. And I closed up, everything was off. And I said, so he goes by Poppy. That's what my kids call him. I said, Poppy, like, this is the second time that's happened. The first time was when we first moved in. I thought it was just someone playing a prank, one of the kids. He said, yeah, but the kids are with you, right? And I said, yeah. He said, so it's not the kids. Something else is going on in this house. And so 3.5 years apart, but similar things. We've seen weird shadows. My wife has heard someone whisper her name while she's laying in bed.
Oh, that's horrible.
And I'll get a text from her. I'm downstairs. She's upstairs. Hey, I need you to come up here. Like immediately I'll go up. Hey, someone whispered my name like in my ear.
Mm.
It wasn't you. Obviously, you're coming up the stairs. We've caught glimpses of what we think is a little boy standing in corners. We catch him out of the corner of our eye. We call him Henry. And so we tell him, it got to the point where it was often enough that we were telling him, hey, Henry, like, you got to stop freaking us out. But there's another thing that scares us. Henry doesn't scare us. He sort of startles us. But there's something else that really scares us. And it's sort of this darkish presence. We don't know exactly what it is. The only time that I've ever seen it was about a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago now. I'm recording right now in the dining room. So right in front of me, what you can't see is a dining room table. I had folded some laundry and stacked the laundry on the table so that, the kids can pick through it the next morning, whatever. And again, because I'm the last one to go to bed at night, I lock everything up. I'm coming through the kitchen into the dining room. But as I do that, I look and I see something peeking out over the top of those piles of laundry. All I could see is maybe this view and up. So like the bridge, the bridge of the nose and up. And it's just staring at me. Henry always hides in corners. So I didn't think it was Henry. And the fear that I got, like I like looked, I squinted to like make sure I was seeing what I was seeing. And when I blinked and like looked again, it was gone. But the fear that I felt was almost overwhelming to where I ran up the stairs as quickly as I could, hopped into bed and like was telling my wife, hey, like there's something weird happening. So we felt little things like that. Me and the dogs have heard, footsteps upstairs, heavy boots, knocking on doors upstairs. The dogs have, been at alert at times. One of our dogs passed away a couple weeks back. So I'll alternate between dog and dogs, but just things like that. So, man, I'm excited to leave this shit in the shed and get on with our lives away from all of the chaos that we've experienced here.
It's one of them when it comes to stuff like that. It's like it's really cool, but it's like I say with haunted dolls. Like I hate the fucking things, but I love the idea of them. But then I always say, not in my house. I don't need any of that shit in my house. I love everything to do with the paranormal, but I don't need it in my house. Sadly, it's now in my house. Well, yeah, I am. I want to go back there. So your wife hearing her name being said, was it a
Yeah.
voice that you recognized? Was it your voice, or was it just a random voice?
No, so it wasn't a voice you recognized, and she said it was almost like a whisper. So
Right.
it was difficult to tell gender or even age, but it was audible enough for her to have freaked out. And then obviously, my wife obviously has some sort of sensitivity to this kind of thing. She always has. Where I love horror, I love spooky stuff. My wife is the complete opposite. She's very selective in the things that she watches or the media she consumes, in part because of this. And so I remember maybe about 6 months ago, we were getting ready for bed, and I was telling her like, hey, like it's been a little while since I've experienced or felt anything weird in the house. And she just sort of looked at me very casually, very like nonchalant, and was like, well, speak for yourself.
Yeah.
And so like I'm sitting there like what the hell? What do you mean? Like, I know what I've felt and how it makes me feel and the things that, I sort of wrestle with after the fact, but like you're infinitely more sensitive to this stuff than I am. So what have you like experienced? And she'll tell me like I'll hear my name, I'll hear people like little kids giggling, she'll hear light touches on her shoulder, usually upstairs in the room. And so we have saged the house, we have like prayed, tried to pray it away. We've commanded the spirits to like leave us alone and like give us just a breath, to without scaring the hell out of us, and it slows down, but
Yeah.
then when it comes back, it really, really scares us, and it's almost like you go from big event to big event to big event, where it's super memorable and the kids are afraid, like, my daughter's afraid to walk to her car at night once it gets dark and, "Dad, can you walk with me?" Or, "Can I ask, one of my boys to go with her?" That kinda thing, and so, yeah, I hope we don't have PTSD by the time we move, but we might.
The reason I asked that is because it's, when was it? Must have been, so my son's, his birthday's October, so it must have been like the beginning of October that it happened. And so he's only one, he's still a baby. So and my wife was upstairs with him trying to get him to sleep, and then we have a baby monitor camera thing, and it connects to the iPad and everything. So I was downstairs in the kitchen, and she was upstairs trying to get him to sleep, and we had the camera on, and it's got obviously sound on it. So, and sometimes if he's been a little shit and won't go to sleep, or he chucks his dummy away or something, or she needs help or something, she'll just shout me, and obviously I can hear her through the camera perfectly fine. So then, like, don't have to like scream up and down the stairs at each other. But I think I must have been like washing dishes or something, because obviously I didn't just go straight up, and I heard her say, "Oh, Liam." Well, then I shouted, "What?" And then shouted, "What?" again, shouted, "What?" again, and then I was like, "Oh, for fuck's sake, what the fuck do you want?" Walked up the stairs, both of them fast asleep.
What?
Yeah.
That's wild.
But like I say, I know for a fact, clear as day, it was my wife's voice saying my name.
Yeah.
It was
Dude,
honestly.
it's the voices that scare me, I think, more than anything. Like, I could, like, rationalize seeing something, right? Like, "Oh,
Mm,
I'm just tired," or "I need a nap," or,
yeah,
tricks of the light and shadows. Like, I can give you 5,000,000 reasons for why this is not a ghost or a spirit or whatever. But the voices, man, it's like, I don't know, it feels like a different layer that is a lot harder to just say, "Well, it's this or it's that." Like, I don't know what to do when my wife says, "I heard someone call my name," or I don't know what to do with you saying like, "Hey, I heard clear as day, like
yeah,
this was calling me," right? Like, it almost feels like you lose that layer of protection and you're
yeah.
just sort of at the mercy of whatever's there, you know?
Mm,
That's a scary feeling to me, I
mm.
think more than anything else.
The weirdest part for me, and the thing that I really didn't like, was the fact that I know for a fact it was her voice. If it was like I said, if it was a voice that I didn't recognize, this probably sounds weird, and people will probably definitely disagree with me here. That would freak me out less.
Yeah.
But because it's her voice, that almost, to me, that feels like it's something sinister.
Yeah. Like it's almost like it's mimicking her to
Yeah.
get to, oh man, like that.
Yeah.
God, I'm sitting in broad daylight. Like it's a beautiful day here and I still have some goosebumps coming up
Oh,
on my arms here. Yeah, that
I know.
sounds terrible. I'm trying to recall, man, if I've ever heard anything specific. I mean, other than like again, like the knocking or the walking, seeing things, I don't know that I've ever actually heard a voice or something call out to me. I know when I had Ashley from Ghost Gossip on a couple weeks back, we were talking about, just sort of clairvoyance and, psychic abilities, that kind of thing. And she mentioned that something I don't think I'd ever heard before was she said, your wife might actually so I was trying to do some reading on that. And I remember, recently telling my wife, like, hey, is it possible that you're a clairaudient, right? Someone who has I'm going to read the psychic ability of clairaudience, meaning they can hear sounds, voices, or messages beyond normal human hearing.
Mm,
That sounds terrible and terrifying.
yeah. That doesn't sound appealing.
No, not at all. So, was that the only time, Liam, that you had heard your voice being called or your name being called, or was this like the start or multiple times?
No, this is what's weird. So that's the only time it's happened in this house and with my wife. But
Oh,
when I was younger and I used to live at home, I can recall at least 3 times. But the big difference is when I was still living at home, when I was, like, say, when I was like a teenager, it's when I'd be in the process of waking up and I'd be adamant that I hear my mum's voice shouting my name, asking me to come downstairs. And then
mm,
I'd like wake up half asleep, so I walk down the stairs, when one eye still open, like, "What do you want?" And they're just like, "What? Nobody shouted you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you did. You just shouted me." And they're like, "No, we didn't."
Interesting, man. It
Like,
just
it's like I never that never used to bother me because like I was like, "Oh well, maybe it was just I don't know, like because I was like half asleep. I don't know, maybe I don't know about whether that has something to do with it." But like I said, the most recent one, obviously, like I said with my wife, that was the worst one because I was wide awake, heard it clear as
yeah.
day.
So what do you do afterwards? Like, did you wake your wife up? Did you tell her? Did you just sort of like shit your pants and do your your best after that? Like what's the aftermath of something like that?
A combination of all of that, to be honest.
Okay,
Like I
that's
say,
fair.
I went upstairs and opened my son's bedroom door, and they were both just asleep on the chair, and I was just like, "What the fuck?" So then, like, I'm tapping her and like, "Right, put him in bed, put him into bed," dragging her downstairs, and I'm like, "You just shouted at me." She's like, "Well, you're on about we've been asleep." I was like, "Yeah, I know, but you just fucking shouted at me. I heard your voice."
Man, like, wish there are times where I wish people listening could see my face because I feel like I'm having a little bit of like an existential crisis here where I'm just trying to picture my own reaction to this. And I know when my wife has said, she's heard things,
Mm,
my reaction is immediately like, what? But then afterwards, it's like the more I sit and think about it, the more I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. That's really like actually scary, But I don't know what I would do if I heard it. You
yeah.
know, I might pack our shit up and go to a hotel for the night. Might call my mom and be like, "Ma, what's going on? What's going on here? Help me. I don't know what to do." But yeah, that's wild, man. That's a wild thing.
Yeah. Well, it's ever since my son's been born. That's the only time stuff started start happening in this house. So that was one of the things I wanted to get to at some point. 'Cause obviously, like you've said, you've got three kids there. And I wanted to know if, especially when they were younger, if anything weird ever happened with them. If they ever like, had any imaginary friends and stuff that they used to speak to.
Yeah, so for sure. So when my daughter, who's the oldest, when she was younger, maybe 2 or 3, 3 or 4, she used to have this strange fear of going to bed at night. And my wife and I, even now, will talk about it that, hey, Nat, you remember when you were younger and you used to go to bed and you used to like be scared of the spider on the ceiling? And, we didn't use night lights for her. And so there were no shadows being cast on the wall. She's always been sensitive to that kind of thing. So we just let her sleep in a dark room. But there was a time for a handful of years when she was really young where she would just be terrified of this thing on the ceiling. It wasn't an imaginary friend, it was just something that scared the hell out of her. But it was years long of just fear and anxiety of going to bed and, can you stay with me till I fall asleep, that kind of thing. I think she's pretty much grown out of it, but something interesting, she's almost 18 now. She's going to be an adult. But when we moved into this house, after that whole episode with the lights being turned on, she specifically came to us and asked if she could put posters on her ceiling. And even now in the upstairs room, her entire ceiling, corner to corner, is covered in posters. And so they're posters of, musicians, they're movie posters, they're posters of things that give her some measure of comfort, where if she were to wake up in the middle of the night, it's something familiar and brings her ease rather than freaking her out. So it's an interesting little thing that we've noticed over the years that whatever the hell it was that scared her at 2 or 3, 3 or 4 years old has caused her to do X, Y, and Z now. And then my youngest son, he had an imaginary friend. He was about 2, maybe 3, that he called Beezer. And Beezer was this like, I don't want to say dark presence for him,
Mm,
but like we assumed it was an imaginary friend and we knew that's what it was. And we would catch him talking to Beezer in the corner. And we embraced it at first. Like, hey, dude, like, tell Beezer to come and have dinner with us. And at first it was that. And then there were times where he would be like, no, Beezer doesn't want to come because he doesn't like what you made. Okay, well, we'll tell Beezer you'll be done. Like, but no, Beezer's upset. Like, Beezer's angry. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Okay, hold on. Like, imaginary friends, like, they play pretend, you do things that are fun. Maybe you get into like good kind of trouble, but like this feels a little darker.
yeah.
Um, and I remember we had a friend who was coming over for dinner, him and his wife, and we had warned him in advance, or like asked him in advance, hey, when you get there, when you get to the house, just say, hey, ask him if you can take Beezer away. You want to take Beezer for a walk, and by the time you get back, Beezer has gone off somewhere else. And my son agreed. The friend took Beezer out, came back 10 minutes later, and my son, he said, well, Beezer's gone, like he went to live with another family. And my son said, no, that's not true. Beezer snuck in when you weren't looking, and he's right here. And it was like this like intense, poignant like thing for him that we were freaked out for weeks after that. And then he just stopped talking. Well, I was recalling this with my son. Um, a couple months back, and I was, we were laughing about Beezer, and he doesn't really remember Beezer all that much.
Mm.
But so we found that in doing some research that Beezer is a shortened version in some sense of Beelzebub,
Oh,
which
for
is
God.
the prince of demons, right? And so I remember sitting with my wife looking at this thing like, what the fuck? Like, was Beezer an imaginary friend, or was Beezer this dark thing masquerading as a kid? Like, what the hell was Beezer? Who the hell was Beezer? And
Actual devil.
yeah, like, and so we've always had these like weird little things with all of us in different ways.
Mm.
So Beezer hasn't come up in 15. My son's going to be 14, so he hasn't come up in maybe 10 years.
Mm.
Not as an actual thing, but, we sort of, whenever he brings up Beezer, we sort of laugh and move on from the conversation pretty quickly. We haven't
Yeah, yeah.
told him about Beezer either.
I don't
So
blame you. I've just got a really, mainly because I did, well, as like you say again, imaginary friends in quotations there, because that's what I always just assumed it was when I was told this, because I have really vague memories of it. So I used to sit in my bedroom for hours and just talk to obviously people who weren't there. And I've got very vague memories of it. Like I remember sitting there and like talking, but I never remember anything that was said. And it was my mum and my dad used to always mention it to me, and like because my mum's medium and stuff, she was loving it. It was recently. It was when I done my Halloween special when I had a medium on there, and she randomly said to me at one point, "Do you remember Charlie?" And I was like, "No, who the fucking hell is Charlie?" And then she was like, because obviously I told her that obviously I used to do that, and she was like, "Oh, that's who you used to speak to." And like obviously, then she told me to ask my mum about it. We finished recording. It was like half past 11 at night my time. Messaging my mum, texting my mum and everything, and like, "Are you still awake?" She's like panicking. "Yeah, what's wrong? What's happened?" And I'm like, "Nothing. Calm down." And I said, when I was a kid and I used to talk to people, was one of them called Charlie? She was like, "Oh, I can't remember." Obviously, 30 years ago.
sure.
Why? And I was like, "Oh, because well, I've been told that I've been told that obviously one of them was called Charlie, and I need to ask you." And she said, "Oh, well, it could be because my mum's spirit guide is called Charlie. My dad's granddad was called Charlie, and I think he had an uncle as well called Charlie or something." So
Okay.
yeah, that's weird.
So do you think now that your Charlie was her guide that was maybe coming to you?
Or a great granddad or something, or I don't know.
Oh,
Possibly. It's
that's
just
interesting.
it's weird that, like I say, I mean, because the woman I was speaking to, like I say, she's over in the US, doesn't know me at all. Like,
Sure.
and then to pick that name and there's three connections to it, that's like there's no way that's coincidence.
Yeah. Coincidence feels like it goes out the window with some of this stuff. Like the
Mm,
connections are too close where it's like,
mm,
statistically, this feels
mm,
impossible that
yeah,
it's just like chance, right? But then you get into like thinking about, well, if it's not coincidence, then what was it?
mm.
And that can be a whole scary thing too, because you're
Oh,
trying to make sense of it. And sometimes the answers are not like, they're not super pleasant to think through, you know?
mm,
Dang, that's wild.
yeah. I've got a really horrible feeling at once. Like in the next year or so, when he's talking properly and stuff, I'm just gonna be sat downstairs and he's just gonna be having full blown conversations with Satan or something in his bedroom.
I mean, the cycle perpetuates, right? And I realize, it's a part of like child development and human development
Mm,
that imagination and imaginative play is all part of, the maturity process, the growth process. But I mean, the dark side of that is, are there things outside of our understanding that use those developmental things in weird ways? I mean, if you believe in the paranormal, the supernatural, that there's something beyond what we see with our senses, right? Then you have to, and if we also believe that they can sort of influence or affect or be part of our realm in some ways,
mm,
then it would make sense that there could be some usefulness. Oh, I can't even finish the thought without freaking myself out that like they use ordinary, unscary things in scary ways. Like that's, and I think, man, like I think that's what scared me about The Exorcist was that it was just like this normal family, this normal kid, doing seemingly normal things. Now playing with a Ouija board at 10 years old, maybe a little not usual or common, but you know, she was sort of minding her own business. It wasn't like she was like seeking this stuff. And all of a sudden, all
yeah,
hell breaks loose, literally, inside
yeah,
and
exactly.
outside. And so like
Mm,
that's a scary thing to me. That
mm.
that kind of thing could happen.
Yeah, it's just weird. It's like in a way, I'd kind of like him to have that sort of same experience and stuff because I mean, obviously, I can't remember any of it, but it's got to be up there somewhere. The memories of it. So I mean, and like I said, I've got no, unless it really was traumatic and I've just repressed it all, then maybe. I don't know.
I mean, the brain is powerful, right? It
Yeah,
takes, like, traumatic things and says, "No, I'm gonna lock that door tight," until
yeah.
somehow it gets unlocked and opened up, and, it can be a wild thing for sure.
But he already sees things. I know. Well, I've been told he does by quite a few people because whenever he sees a picture of my granddad, who my granddad's passed away, God, 12, 13, 14 years ago. So obviously never seen him at all. And whenever he sees pictures of him, like he does this with his hand every time he sees a picture of him. And
Interesting.
yeah, and one really weird thing that happened was, like, say, he always does that whenever he sees a picture of him. Where my house is laid out, I was bathing him one night, and based the way he was facing in the bath, if he turns round, you can look into his bedroom. And he turned round and he was doing that, like, towards his bedroom door, and like he was doing that really wide, really wide-eyed open stare, like he does when he sees pictures of my granddad. It was like, I was like, that's fucking weird. I was like, because I mean, I've got a picture of my granddad outside the bathroom, but on the other side, so he couldn't see it, or literally all he could see was the door into his room. I was like, right, this is weird. I'm gonna record him and I'm gonna send it to some of my friends who are mediums and stuff and people who have had on here. I sent it to a few people and see if they can pick up on anything through a video. I didn't know whether that would even be possible, but I was like, right, I'm gonna try it. They all said the same thing. They all said it was my granddad. They all told me the same thing. But when I was recording him, so I was recording him, and then I turned it round and pointed my phone at his bedroom door. And when I'd done that, my phone glitched out and the screen just went green and everything. But you only see that when you play the video back. It didn't actually happen while I was recording it, and that's
Interesting.
never happened ever before.
That's wild, and that's creepy.
Yeah.
I mean, the waving of the hand, like there's some sort of recognition there. Obviously, the glitching feels like there's some sort of awareness, communication, maybe.
Interference with someone's.
Man, that's wild. See, and like I've never had those kinds of experiences. So like I've never. Well, so I'll rationalize it. I'll say that I've never had an experience like with technology where I felt like this is outside the realm of possibility. When I first started recording the show, I used to record at night because it was just the easiest time. Kids were asleep, everybody's sort of settled down. And I stopped recording at night after maybe the second or third episode because early on, I was recording an episode on sleep paralysis. And I always, I edit as I record so that I don't have to do too much later on. And as I was listening back to one particular phrase, I don't remember what the phrase was. It was something, it was maybe 3 or 4 words. I heard what sounded like a woman's voice over the top of mine saying the same words, but it was like super distinct. So like I'm talking normal, I could hear my normal voice playback, and then at the end of that sentence, it sounded like a woman's voice was, significantly higher pitched, much softer, less sharp. And I remember sending the little sound clip to my dad and saying, "Dad, like this sounds weird. Tell me if you hear this." And he's like, "Well, who was recording with you?" And I said, "Well, no one. I'm like sitting here in the pool house by myself." And so I just explained it away as like, well, I was still learning how to use the editing software and the mic I had just bought, 2, 3 episodes in. This is just technology glitches. But I think about that audio literally every time I think to myself, I'll just record tonight. And I
Yeah,
think about it, I'm like, nah, hell no. I'm not doing that. I'm going to record early in the morning when the sun has come up and it's not me walking out into this pitch black, between the houses. So that's the only like that. But the idea of that,
mm,
communicating through technology, communicating in whispers, something about communication there just scares, like genuinely unsettles me and scares me,
yeah.
you know.
Have you still got that clip?
What, I think I do. Let me see. So I know I sent it to my dad years ago, so it
Mm,
may still be in my messages with him. I'm pretty sure I saved it in one of my audio folders. I just have to go digging for it. But yeah, if I find it, I will send it to you because
yeah.
it is like it's wild. Let me see if I can pull it up in my text while we're talking.
Because I think audio stuff is weird. Is because I think it's very. How the hell do I word this? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. It all depends on people's ears. It's why when you're watching Ghost Adventures and stuff, I hate it when they put subtitles on it when they're doing like spirit box sessions or EVPs and stuff. I hate it when they put
Yeah.
subtitles on it because it just puts in your head, oh, that's what it's saying. You automatically hear that when you see the subtitle. But I had
It's
an
a
I had an incident before, so I was recording with my friend Michelle from Shell Spooky Stories, and I'll actually tell you about this weird painting that I've got behind me through this story. So I was recording with her. She has a haunted doll, and this is like the final nail in the coffin for my hatred of haunted dolls. So we were recording, and then I was editing the episode back late at night. It was like midnight. My wife was at work, so I'm sat there on the sofa editing away, and through her microphone, there's a voice. Can't hear what it says. A lot of people have told me some people have told me it sounds like a woman humming or singing. I won't tell you what I think it says because I'll send you the little clip I've got afterwards, and you can tell me if you think it says anything at
Okay.
all. Recently, when I met up with Michelle, she'd done me a painting of the haunted doll, so that's what that is behind me. So I was like, well, that's a great present. Hate the bloody thing, so I'll paint you one. Thank you very much, Michelle, for that.
So I have a story about two, well, I don't know if they were haunted dolls, but definitely two dolls. When we, maybe about 10 years ago, we were living in a house. This was before we moved up to where my parents were. And we were just getting the house ready for sale, right? Painting, cleaning. We had hired an HVAC company to come and clean out the air ducts. We wanted, just sort of dotting our I's, crossing our T's, that kind of thing. And when they got done, they said, well, we found some things in the ductwork. And we said, okay, well, we were hoping like a chest of gold or something like that. And most of it was just like coins and that kind of thing. But there was a doll, maybe about 8 or 9 inches tall, frilly dress, probably looked like it was 30 years old, 40 years old. Someone had stuffed it in there. And the doll was holding a dollar bill in its like hand, like clutched inside its palm, clenched fist. And so we thought that was weird, no big deal. Well, a couple days later, I go up into the attic, into like the attic space, mostly again because I'm just trying to make sure there's nothing lingering up anywhere. And the attic space wasn't a space you could like stand in. So you would get up in through the closet, and you would have to basically army crawl your way to wherever you wanted to go. So I flashed the light up there, and I noticed that we had never been up there. You can't use it for storage. So I noticed as I flashed the light that maybe 2/3 of the way in towards the back, there's this case. Just looks like this. I don't even know how I would describe it, like a toolbox almost. So I'm obviously thinking to myself, like, what the hell's that? But at the same time, I'm like the feeling of claustrophobia here. So I'm not going to worry about it. So I come down, tell my wife, like, hey, there's this weird case upstairs in the attic. And she looks up and she sees, and she's like, well, you should go get it. What is that? And I'm like, okay, you gotta stay here because I don't like I don't like tight spaces, so I don't want to have a panic attack or anything like that while I'm crawling there and back. She stays there. I go and I crawl to it and I open it up, and it's another doll. And this one's bigger, maybe about 12 to 14 inches tall. Frilly dress. This one is older than the first one we found in the ducts. And I just remember having this, and I don't know if it was the fear of like being closed in or recognizing like there's no other light up here other than the flashlight. Oh my God, I have so much further to go to get back to the house. Like my wife is there, and I remember like freaking out for a good 30, 40 seconds. And my wife is like, what is it? What is it? I'm like, it's a doll, Shannon. It's a doll. I don't know what, I don't know what it is. And we got it down. It was this blue case, this doll on a pedestal that, and we brought it with us when we moved, which I don't know
Oh,
why we
God.
did that.
What to set it on
And
fire.
so before we moved, so we moved up to where my parents were. We lived there a year, and then we were going to move back. Just wasn't a great situation to be up there. Right before we moved, maybe about a month before we moved, we're getting packed up, throwing stuff out. We had a massive flood in the basement, ruined and destroyed everything. Pictures, albums, all sorts of stuff, furniture, everything got destroyed. Thousands of dollars worth of stuff. But the doll in the case was just there. It was sitting on a pile of things, and so we were like, we're not taking any chances. We threw the doll in the trash. We've never seen it or heard from it again. But like in my, scary brain, I'm like, this fucking doll caused this. It's this doll's fault. We're done with it. So I don't have any follow up to that story. But yeah, we had some really weird doll experiences in the past.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about them. They're just, I don't know. I just don't know what it is. It's why I really hate that Michelle has painted the eyes pointing in a certain direction, because I just keep thinking to myself, one day I'm going to come in this shed and the eyes are going to be pointing the other way, and then I'm going to have to burn the shed down.
I mean, I think we all probably have that one thing, right? That like really gets under our skin.
Yeah.
So like for me, it's not haunted dolls, although I do find them creepy. For me, it's it doesn't matter what movie I'm watching. It could be the worst, like most low budget, demon possession movie. It could be a high big budget. It could be whatever it is. But demon eyes, the like changing of the eyes or like anything to do with demon eyes just bugs me. All of a sudden that scene or that movie becomes one of the scariest, even in that moment where it's like, okay, I need to look away. I can't like continue watching for too long. Definitely I'm not making eye contact. So things about the eyes. Like I'm recording this episode on Anneliese Michel, the German woman who, was allegedly possessed, died at the hands of her priest, that kind of thing. And so much of the story, there are little like bits of the story that are littered with her eyes changed. Her eyes went jet black. Her pupils were so dilated you couldn't tell what was what. And it's like she was staring at and I'm like, oh my God, like it's not even the audio of the exorcisms that scares me. It's the concept of the eyes changing that is just because like the eyes are, the windows to the soul, right? That's what they say. But
Yeah.
for me, it's like I can tell a lot by how a person uses their eyes, right? And so there's something about it that just, oh man, instant regret.
I know what you mean on that one, because I like it. It's a weird thing that I have, because so my little catchphrase is when it comes to the paranormal and all the weird shit in life, is that I say that I believe in things, but I don't know what I believe in, because originally when I started out doing this, I was much more skeptical than I am now, because well, I don't have a choice now with the things that have happened and heard and seen. I can't be skeptical anymore. But I am still very, very, very skeptical on things like demonic possession and stuff. But they're the type of horror movies that scare me the most. I don't know why.
Yeah, I think so too. Of all the types of horror or subgenres of horror, religious horror definitely gets under my skin the most. And demonic possession is by far the most likely to get a reaction from me. I think it's because there's just something really scary about losing control of your body, your mind and body, and not having the strength or even really the capability to fight back or do anything. You're dependent on outside forces to sort of figure it out for you, that kind of thing. So there's something really scary about that to me, both in terms of like horror and just in real life. Just the possibility of losing my faculties, like that's a thing that really, really gets to me.
Yeah. Do you believe it's a thing then? Do you think that it does happen?
Man, that's a hard question. That's so
Yeah.
hard.
No,
So
but
I'm writing this script for this upcoming episode, which will release tomorrow. Well, by the time folks listen to this, it will have already been released. But that's the question I'm tackling. Like with this woman, Anneliese Michel. So she had like medical and mental health symptoms that were pretty like prominent. Really, really difficult things. But then there were also, she firmly believed she was possessed by demons or that evil forces were out to get her. And so she had signs of demonic possession. And one of the questions I'm not really seeking to answer, but really looking to pose is faith and reason opposite each other? Like, is the science community and the religious community, are they just completely opposed and there's no overlap? Or is there overlap? And if there is, what is that overlap, right? So is it possible that what we understood previously as demonic possession, or what was categorized as demonic possession, may be mental health issues now? Like, is there a link? Are they separate? Are they overlapped? And so the paranormal side of me, the believer side of me, says, well, we believe that there's things outside our understanding, right? I mean, supernatural, paranormal stuff is just outside the scope of what we understand, what we know. So in that sense, yeah, I could see demonic possession being an actual real life thing. The other side of me says, but like we have so many advances in, like we've made so many advancements in technology, medical, right? Medical sciences, mental health. Is it possible that what we understood then and categorized as this may actually have a more natural, maybe more rational explanation? I don't know. I know that's such a cop-out, like, and I'm not a centrist for most things, but I feel like each case is so nuanced and each case is so unique that you almost have to take the individual at face value, right? So like if the individual says, well, I'm struggling with X, Y, and Z medical health issue. Okay, let's deal with it that way. If a person says, I believe I'm demonically possessed, okay, like how much and what direction and how far do we push in that direction, right? To say, all right, maybe we need to tackle this spiritually in addition to medical and mental health, right? And I think that was the crux of the issue with Anneliese Michel, was that they favored religious and spiritual treatment over and above mental health treatment, and she died as a result of that. And so the trial was really centered around, where's the overlap? Is it a both and or an either or? And I think the priests, if I remember right, they were held criminally responsible for her death, while the court also acknowledged that the line of treatment that she went through was her preferred line of treatment, right? And so you get into questions of like agency, autonomy, power of attorney, all these things. So my answer is yes to both. Are both equally valid? Yes. Should they be? That's the part I don't
Mm.
know.
Mm.
I'm not sure. How do you cancel one out and pick up the other?
Mm. See, I say I don't believe in it because
Okay.
I mean, some people will say to me like, "Oh well, how can you believe in the paranormal and stuff, but you don't believe in like demonic possession and stuff?" Well, that's because I don't believe in demons. Because to me, like I say, any sort of paranormal experience I've had, majority, like I say, recently, I say has been like I say through my granddad. Like I say, it's people that have lived. Like I say, I don't believe that there's evil demons and stuff. And like I say, to me, that's not a thing. I mean, I'm not religious or anything either. So I don't believe in a god or anything like that. So I don't know whether that has anything to do with my way of thinking with it. But I don't know. I think I can get behind the idea that when we die we'll become something else. I don't think there's other evil things flying around and stuff. I mean, there could be. I don't know. It's one of the things. It's like I always say with the paranormal. We're never going to know until we go there, and then we can't tell anybody anyway. So
It's a good point. I mean, I think that's part of why we are still searching for answers because we don't have them. Right. And,
mhm.
I know folks are like super dogmatic in so many things, like this is what it is and this is what it's not. But the truth is, like, truth statements demand some measure of evidence, and the lack of evidence leaves the questions available for us. And so, do I know? Nope. Do I have thoughts? Sure. Are those thoughts helpful? Not always. That's the beauty of some of this. And, rather than seeking objective answers to subjective things that each of us experiences uniquely differently, why not just have a discussion? Why not just open the floor for the discussion, engage with it as helpfully as possible, and, draw the conclusions that are most comfortable to you, either way. After my dad died in 2024, those were questions that were heavy on my mind, like what is the afterlife? Or, is he in a better place? Is he in a worse place? Is he in a different dimension or plane of existence? Whatever, right? All these things, because like that's the most pertinent thing that you feel. And it took me about a year or so to really just reckon with the fact that I don't know,
Mm.
and I catch little glimpses of him in different things at different times, things that I can't explain. Someone will wear a t-shirt that he used to wear that I have a picture of him wearing, or a certain song will come on the radio when I'm thinking about him, or I'll look at the clock and it's his birthday or whatever it is, like little random occurrences. Is that him coming and communicating from beyond? I don't know.
Yeah.
Does it give me comfort that it could be? And so it's this weird like conflict almost between, you know, fact and not maybe not fact and fiction, reality and perception of reality.
Yeah. Well, I think then it's a good question to end on then is this, which I've stolen off my friend, but I've asked a few people now when they've been on it, and even when I've been on other people's podcasts, because I think it's just a good question, I think. So if you could have it to be 100% fact, common knowledge, everybody knows that it's true, like the paranormal, ghosts, spirits, and everything is true, 100% fact, would you want that to be?
No, that's an easy
That's
question
what I
for me to
always.
answer. I would say 100% no. I think there's and I think it's maybe because my personality is inquisitive by nature. Love asking questions, love learning and researching and discussing and debating, whatever. And I think we think there's catharsis in finality, that it brings us
Mm,
some measure of comfort. But I think there's something that we lose the beauty of in having that finality, right? Like there's something beautiful about exploration. There's beauty in conversing with people who think like you, who don't think like you, who think differently than all these things. And so I think we lose a certain measure of that curiosity when we're just like, yeah, this is what it is. And like, okay, I guess we move on, So I think we lose community. We lose the beauty of exploration when we try too hard or come at things too dogmatically to say it's this or it's this or it's not that. So for me, no, I would be perfectly content staking some of my opinions and thoughts on pure faith rather
yeah.
than, some measure of like objective truth. But I know some others that don't find comfort in that's a really distressing, harrowing sort of thing. But yeah, I would say no.
I always say no for two reasons. One, we're going to find out anyway at some point. So
That's
there we
true.
go. At some point, we're going to find out anyway. And two, if that was the case, we wouldn't have just had this conversation.
That's
There'd
it.
been
That's
no
it. Right. I mean, I would be in my own bubble and silo. So would you. We'd be doing our own
yeah.
things. And, the questions, sit us at a table, right? Even
Yeah.
from halfway across the world, because like I'm on the East Coast and you're in the UK. Like we're not
Yeah.
even on the same continent, right? And so I think there's something about this that allows us to build bridges where bridges wouldn't
Mhm.
exist otherwise. Yeah, I'm with you 100%.
Yeah, well, I definitely think that's a really nice place to leave that there, Will. So, been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, mate. So, do you just want to let our listeners know, if they don't already somehow know, where they can find you, where they can find the Red Tree House?
Yeah, for sure. So Red Treehouse is wherever you find podcasts. Spotify, Apple Pods, Pocket Casts, Podcast Addict, wherever you find them, you'll find the Red Treehouse. Just search for it. It should be the only show that comes up. On the socials, I'm mostly active on Instagram, occasionally TikTok. I'm ambivalent towards it. Some days I like it, some days I really hate it. Same thing with Threads. But on TikTok, you can find me at Red Treehouse Pod. Super active. Try to post at least daily, respond to comments, very responsive to DMs, that kind of thing. So be sure to follow, like, subscribe. Love 5-star reviews. If you have story ideas or topics or you want to submit a story, you can email me at redtreehousepod@gmail.com. Also super responsive there. Check it a couple times a day. I love engaging with the community, whether that's creators or content creator, show host, fans of the show, folks who have spooky stuff to tell. I love it. So yeah.
Nice, nice. Right then, guys. So we shall leave it there for this one. So as always, go and follow our Instagram page at the Spooky Shed Podcast. There's a link in the bio there for all the other socials that we don't use anymore. But link for the merch store, Patreon page, YouTube channel, and all that other good stuff. And we shall speak to you next time.